Animals have existed on Earth since before the Cambrian explosion, and have thus accompanied humans ever since our very beginnings as a species. Throughout human history, we can encounter bizarre or remarkable stories of animals which humans encountered, captured, or fought. A famous example is the whale Porphyrios, which during the time of Justinian terrorized the sailors of Constantinople for decades on end. In this video, we will investigate Porphyrios' story, but also cover other animals from the Neolithic and the early modern period, and from various parts of the world. How did famous ancient businessmen dress their pets? How did unlikely animals feature in religious stories? And where can we find the earliest domesticated pets? Welcome to our video on Porphyrios the Byzantine whale and other animals, their stories, and the bizarre occurrences with humans. This video is made available for free thanks to our YouTube members and patrons. We fund our free content through our program of exclusive videos made for our members and patrons, who get 2 documentaries per week not available to the public. Join their ranks and watch the series on the Albigensian Crusade, Fall of Sparta, First Punic War, Italian Reunification Wars, History of Prussia, Biography of Sulla, Russo-Japanese War, Reconquista, Persian Wars, and War of Spanish Succession, and much more. All this is made for and with generous donations from our backers. So if you're enjoying our content and want to see more and support the cause of history, consider becoming a YouTube member or patron. Join their ranks via the link in the description and pinned comment to learn our schedule, get early access to all videos, voting rights on future videos, and much more. You will be able to watch more than 100 exclusive videos today. Thanks for supporting us. Porphyrios himself is an elusive whale, existing mostly in the Byzantine historian Procopius's History of the Wars and the Secret History. The origin of the name itself is not clear. Some consider the terrible cetacean to be named after Porphyrion, the giant of classical Greek mythology, famously slain by Heracles. Others think it comes from Porphyros, or the colour of Byzantine purple. Also unclear is what species of whale Porphyrios was. Candidates include a sperm whale, an orca, a blue whale, or a fin whale. The size of Porphyrios was massive, at over 13 meters tall. In the 7th book of the History of the Wars, Procopius discusses a massive whale which terrorized local fishermen as well as the city of Byzantium in general. His reign of terror lasted for over 50 years, with major breaks in between. Essentially, Porphyrios would mess around with fish waters and rout ships that got in his way. These events took place during the reign of the Emperor Justinian, and Procopius says that the great Basileus, enraged at the insolence of this aquatic mammal, devised various plans to bring about Porphyrios' annihilation. We sadly have no information as to what those plans were, but we can perhaps imagine some hilarious Tom and Jerry or Roadrunner versus Wile E. Coyote shenanigans with a distinct Byzantine flair. In the History of the Wars, it is described that in the year 550 CE, Porphyrios was chasing some dolphins from the mouth of the Euxainos Pontos and ended up being washed ashore in the mud. The locals, who for decades were terrorized by this aquatic menace, stormed and descended upon Porphyrios. They hacked the whale to pieces, and in a rather surreal conclusion to the whale's life story, ended up eating him either fresh or pickled. There is scant information in terms of the details of the life of Porphyrios. Zoology in Byzantium, often but not exclusively, took the form of individual portraits, through which humans related to nature and how the two engaged. This is perhaps why Porphyrios is so highlighted in Procopius's histories. This was not the only way through which the Byzantines and their classical ancestors understood their relationship with animals. Many treatises exist on breeding horses and hawks for hunting or military affairs, or practical analyses of animal species, building on Greco-Roman sources such as Aristotle. Perhaps then, Porphyrios' prominence in the Byzantine history pages isn't due to some deeply embedded theological precedent, but simply because the people of Constantinople stood in sheer awe at the audacity of this 6th century Moby Dick. One notorious equestrian companion we have all heard of is Boukephalas, Alexander the Great's trusted steed. But what do we know of his origins and life? For a start, the name Boukephalas has 3 possible meanings. Either that he had horn-like protuberances on his head, that he had an ox-looking mark on his forehead, or that he had a big head like an ox, or it might have been the name of his specific Thessalian breed. His origins also have multiple mythological and historical links: that he was a gift from either Cappadocia, Egypt or Thessaly, that he was an estate horse, or more fancifully, that he was the child of an elephant and a camel. The story of how antiquity's greatest horse forged its bond with antiquity's greatest conqueror is infamous. One day, the young Prince Alexander came to see the horse which no one could tame. Realizing that Boukephalas was afraid of his shadow, Alexander asked for the opportunity to break in the steed. In Plutarch's account, King Philip of Macedon rebuked his son, asking if he thinks he could succeed where his elder failed. However, insistent, Alexander turned the horse towards the sun. No longer seeing his shadow, Boukephalas relaxed and let Alexander ride him. Philip is said to have quoted, "My son, seek for yourself another kingdom, for Macedonia has no room for you." The two became inseparable, Alexander riding on the massive horse in his battles and travelling through Persia. So great was the love of the conqueror for his steed that when Boukephalas disappeared in the land of the Uxians, Alexander threatened them with utter annihilation if they did not find the horse, prompting the terrified Uxians to search the land and immediately bring him back. However, in a twist worthy of a Greek tragedy, it was Alexander's constant campaigning that, according to Plutarch, on authority from a Nisaean, ended Boukephalas' life. The source claims that after the Battle of Hydaspes, Boukephalas was exhausted and died at 30 years of age. The age is contested, as some scholars consider that to be too high, and Boukephalas was more likely 20 years old at the time of his death. In the Alexander romance, this tale is slightly different, as Poros, one of Alexander's foes in India, is said to have wounded the horse. Alexander dragged his beloved Boukephalas to his side, but the horse died after the battle. A heartbroken Alexander is said to have buried Boukephalas on the west bank of the Hydaspes and founded the city Boukephalea in his honour. Another great conqueror who had beloved animals in his care was the one and only Akbar the Great of the Mughal Empire. Akbar's large stables and gardens hosted many animals. The great Indian emperor was known for integrating the Turco-Persian elite of his ancestral Central Asian homeland with the regional Rajput elites of his Indian domains into a unified pan-Indian Mughal elite. This integration included bonding exercises such as hunting trips. In preparation for these outings, cheetahs were captured and kept in gardens, subject to strict meat regimens based on the class they were assigned to. Cheetahs were then used for hunting, such as the cheetah Chitranjan, who was used to hunt deer. In a more luxurious case, Akbar is said to have had a favourite cheetah, the famed Samand Samand is a Persian term meaning like a ruby, and his story is more of a novelty than a coherent narrative. From what we can attest in the Akbarnama, Samand was the favourite cheetah, and Akbar pampered his treasured feline with a life of pampered opulence. Samand was always paraded around in a litter, not even needing to walk. He was also dressed with jewels when out and about. Bejeweling one's pets was not necessarily unique as a historical phenomenon, as for instance, Crassus in Rome is said to have had a favourite eel whom he dressed with gems. In Mughal terms, this display of luxury also reveals Akbar's deep interest in zoology, one of the many schools of higher education he patronized during his reign. Elephants, long a great part of Indian nobility, were introduced by Akbar into his army, for Akbar saw them as the embodiment of strength. One such elephant features in the Akbarnama, or the court history of Akbar. It is said that one day outside Agra in 1561, a large elephant named Hawa'i was passing by, who was fierce and untamable. Hawa'i was likely looted from the Indian prince Hemu, who the text claims was seditious and a threat to Akbar. While everyone was looking at the giant pachyderm, Akbar, who was young at the time and still maturing into the imperial role, jumped atop the elephant's back in a seemingly reckless act. In front of a shocked audience, Akbar managed to gain control of Hawa'i, and not only that, chased another elephant atop Hawa'i's back. This story is often used as an allusion by court historians to demonstrate how Akbar subdued India, with his ability to conquer the mighty elephant, symbolic of his ability to conquer the mighty subcontinent. From speedy cheetahs to lumbering elephants, Akbar's life shows just how elite society, and particularly the Mughals, saw animals as partners in their lifestyles and in their values. We now move on to France in the medieval period, where popular local saintly cults abounded during a time when the Catholic Church was seeking ideological and theological conformity. Animals feature prominently in Christian saintly lives, such as Saint Seraphim of Sarov taming a bear, Saint Anthony of Padua preaching to fishes, or Saint Francis of Assisi preaching to birds. However, our story is more interesting, for it features not saints preaching to animals, but animals being treated as saints. In the writings of Stephen of Bourbon, a church inquisitor, he claims that in the city and countryside around Lyon, the people revered a certain Saint Guinefort, a saint known to heal children. He was intrigued by the locals' piety, but when he asked, he was horrified to discover that said saint was actually a dog. This dog's story is intriguing. In life, he was the loyal hound of a local lord in Neuville. One day, the dog was left alone with the lord's baby when he and his wife were gone for the day. A serpent appeared, eager to eat the child, but Guinefort bore his teeth and faced him in mortal combat. Guinefort defeated the serpent but was wounded, spreading blood all over the room. When the wife of the lord returned, she thought Guinefort had slaughtered the child. The lord struck down Guinefort only to realize the child was safe and sound. Guilt-stricken, the noble couple buried their loyal papa outside and built a small grove around his tomb, which slowly became the center of a local cult. As if by divine will, the lord's castle was destroyed, but the dog's cult remained until its suppression by the Catholic Church. This kind of canine story occurs elsewhere in the world, such as in the Anglo-Saxon legend of Gelert, a hound who defended a child from a wolf, only to die by his owner's hand, and the Sanskrit tale of the mongoose who fought off a snake, only to be killed by the Brahmin who thought they had attacked his child. The cult of Saint Guinefort, however, is most likely a local development. It is likely that these cults, which have existential origins and needs, such as protection of children, originate in folk religious Christian traditions, which most likely grew as a reaction to an increasingly aristocratic and Latinate church elite with little organic influence. After all, if the church is more concerned with theological details over the well-being of the poor, why not seek a new saint, even if they are a dog? We will now transition from the Christian world to the Muslim one, and talk about a famous donkey in Islam called Yafur. This legendary ass was one of the many animals which were used for transportation by the Prophet Muhammad. Other animals named in the Quran include the camel Kaswa, meaning split ears, the mule Duldul, meaning vacillating, and the black horse Sakb, meaning swift. Yafur, meanwhile, means gazelle in Arabic, possibly because of his speed. Ultimately, we know very little about this creature. There are some later sources which mention his existence, such as the Book of Gifts and Rarities, or Kitab al-Hadaya wal-Tuhaf. In this book, Yafur is said to have been a gift from a certain Al-Muqawqis, a Byzantine governor of Egypt with whom Muhammad was in correspondence. This may have been Cyrus, Orthodox Archbishop of Alexandria, or a Sasanian governor, but the jury is still out. Alternative theories include that a Byzantine man converted to Islam and gifted Muhammad the donkey, or that the beast of burden was a spoil after the 628 CE attack on Khaybar. Not much else is known about Yafur, but an interesting development about it took place in Shia Islam's legends. In this tradition, the donkey was said to be able to speak, in a clear parallel with the she-donkey of Balaam in Judaism. These traditions often include long conversations between Muhammad and Yafur, in which the former's status as prophet is assured by the latter being a descendant of a line of donkeys serving the previous prophets of God. Yafur is said to have died by throwing himself into a well after Muhammad died in his sorrow. This story is intriguing, as it shows both the political economy and gifting patterns in the region. Animals have long been gifted from one political leader to another as a symbol of friendship and prestige, such as the elephant given to Charlemagne by Harun al-Rashid. Yafu's tale is also important as it offers us some glimpse into the relationship that the holiest figure in Islam had with animals, and how humble creatures like donkeys are often elevated into high status in Abrahamic religious traditions. Horses in the past were used as beasts of war, and one of the most famous sedentary societies with an equine ethos from the time of the ancient Achaemenids to the present is Persia. In this case study, we will not talk about one animal, but an entire breed of horses which are extinct today. These were the Nisaean horses, notorious for both their massive size and strength and speed. The Nisaean plain is located in the south of the Zagros Mountains, which is where the horses were bred. The first mention of them appear in Herodotus's histories, where he describes them in the armies of Persia. These horses were likely of the same stock as the Tianma, or the heavenly horses, mentioned in classical Chinese texts. These horses were said to have come in many colours, and probably were bred long before Herodotus encountered them. Cyrus the Great is said to have had a special relationship with this equine breed, as when he came to power, he dedicated them to Ahura Mazda and Mithra, sacrificing these esteemed steeds as a form of highly prestigious offering to the Iranian gods. In Achaemenid iconography, the horse symbolizes both honor and religious authority, so this story suggests that the Persian King of Kings legitimized their rule in part through horse-related symbolism. Nisaean horses were used by the Persian nobility in the Persian Wars, where they made inroads into Greece, and were possibly bred by the Thessalians, potentially becoming ancestors of the aforementioned Boukephalas. Later, the Nisaean horses were used by Alexander's army, and were the subject of the War of the Heavenly Horses, a legendary clash between ancient China and a Hellenistic city in Central Asia, which we've done a video on in the past. One of the main breeding grounds of the Nisaean horses was likely Armenia, which was one of the reasons why that kingdom became an endemic battleground between Rome and Parthia. In fact, the Byzantine Emperor Justinian is said to have built an imperial stud in the region of Bithynia, and to have provided them to the Arab tribes in their fight against the Sassanids. Such was the prestige of the horses that breeders appeared all the way up to Sogdiana, and Scythian and Alanian raiders would steal and breed these horses for themselves. Sadly, these horses are no longer with us, as their breed died out after the first sack of Constantinople in 1204. However, many modern horse breeds, like the legendary Arabian, serve as their true descendants. We will wrap up this video with one last case study going all the way back to the Neolithic period. In this case, we do not know the name of the animal in question, but we do know its species and function. To begin the story, we must go to the crossroads of three continents, the island of Cyprus. Near the southern coast of the island, in the village of Shilorokambos, there is a pre-pottery Neolithic village of the same name dating back to the 9th to 8th millennium BCE. In this village, there exists a human burial featuring a man interred next to a Felis sylvestris, or the local version of cats. The human is buried in a fetal position, and the cat lies next to them in a similar position. This archaeological discovery is the earliest known domesticated case of a cat in human history, and it is remarkable for the likely emotional connection between the cat and their owner. After all, why else would they have been buried together? The cat was 8 months old, and possibly was killed to follow their master to the grave. While morbid, this practice has occurred with other later societies, and the important part is that both skeletons face each other, possibly showing a close social bond. We sadly know nothing else about either the cat or their owner, and how their adventures in life unfolded. But it is still an intriguing archaeological discovery and a touching moment of human history. The cat was most likely introduced to Cyprus, as with many other animals, brought by humans in boats, and either left to be wild or domesticated there. The story of the grave of Shilorokambos is a testament to the necessity of humans connecting with animals, and that the human worldview has always included animals, including the proverbial cat. Cats have reigned in Cyprus ever since, transcending ethnic, religious, and political decisions in favor of feline freedom. The lives of animals and humans are forever entwined, and human history is a testament to this. From Porphyrios' titanic battles with Justinian, to Akbar and Alexander's love of their animal companions as symbols of their power and privilege, animals have been part of politics and the battle of humans and nature. Nisaean horses show us the geopolitical presence of animals and political economy, while Saint Guinefort and Yafur show us the presence of animals in religious traditions. From the time of the Cat of Shiloracambos, and even before, to the present day, we see that animals and their shenanigans, however marvelous or bizarre, are an inalienable part of human history, something our anthropocentric conceptions need to take into account. If you like these unconventional videos, subscribe and press the bell button for more. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Recently, we have started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.